So class, we're on day 2 of our new unit, focusing on point of view, and this is our objective for this lesson. So we're going to be able to tell the difference between a narrator's observations and a narrator's interpretations. So what they're seeing versus what they think it means. So let's begin. If you remember, we've been reading about Here Boy, that excerpt about a dog running amok in a grocery store called Winn-Dixie. So we've identified Opal as our main character, and she's talking in first-person narration. She's a first-person narrator. Today we're going to explore her point of view and analyze her thoughts and feelings and how it affects the way she views events. So we're going to be filling out this chart over here. It's called our observation and interpretations chart as we look back in our text. So we're going to focus on the difference between a narrator's observations, or what she reports or sees happening, and her interpretations, which are her descriptions that reflect feelings and judgments. So we're going to focus on paragraph 2 to get us started. So let's head on over to paragraph 2, right over here. And then the dog came running around the corner. He was a big dog and ugly. Now, notice that first sentence describes the dog running around the corner. That's an action. It's not a feeling or opinion. So I'm going to write that under observations, since it's something that isn't her thoughts, isn't her emotions, but something that we can all look and say, yeah, that's what the dog is doing. If we were all there, we'd say, yeah, that's what's happening. So let's expand this, and we're going to paste that portion from our text. Remember, since I copied it straight from the text, I put it in those quotation marks for us to let the reader know that, hey, it came straight from our text. So let's head back and let's keep reading paragraph 2 now. He was a big dog and ugly, and he looked like he was there having a really good time. Now, these next 3 sentences, they include Opal's opinions or judgment. The dog is big. That's a matter of opinion. It's ugly. That's certainly an opinion. I may look at this dog and think, oh, he's really cute. So saying he's ugly was an opinion. And it looked like he was having a really good time. Here she's making a judgment about that dog's feelings. So we don't really know if he was having a good time or not, but she's making that interpretation based on him wagging his tail, smiling, running around. So I'm going to put that in my interpretations column, those 3 sentences. Let me shrink it up for us. Remember, it's again in those quotation marks because we copied it straight from the text. Okay, let's head back to paragraph 2 and keep looking and see what other observations or interpretations we have. His tongue was hanging out and he was wagging his tail. He skidded to a stop and smiled right at me. I had never before in my life seen a dog smile, but this is what he did. He pulled back his lips and he showed me all his teeth. Then he wagged his tail so hard they knocked some of the oranges off a display, and they went rolling everywhere, mixing in with the tomatoes and onions and green peppers. Well, one of the observations I noticed was she said his tongue was hanging out, he was wagging his tail, he skidded to a stop. Now, this one I'm not going to copy straight from the text. I'm going to summarize it. And so that means I'm just going to put it in my own words. And since I'm putting in my own words, I don't need to put those quotation marks down because it's not being copied straight from the text. Now, what did I notice about the other section? Did I notice any interpretations? Anything about those thoughts or feelings? Well, one of the things I noticed was when it said, the dog smiled right at me. Now, we know dogs can't really smile because they just don't have that facial muscles. And that just tells me that she's interpreting that his joyful attitude towards her was that he's smiling at her. So that's an interpretation. How that dog's face was looking is what she's thinking is going on. So I'm going to put that right there. Smiled right at me, and that's smiling. So now let's head to another paragraph and see if we can dissect or pull out any more information from this. So we're going to go and look at paragraph 4 now and see what we find on this paragraph. And I'm going to slide this over just so we can see our interpretations as well. The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail and smiling. He stood up on his hind legs. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having in the produce department. but somehow he ended up knocking the manager over. And the manager must have been having a bad day, because lying there on the floor, right in front of everyone, he started to cry. The dog leaned over him, real concerned, and licked his face. Well, we see some observations here, some things that everyone could look around and say, yeah, that's happening. The dog went running over to the manager, wagging his tail. That's something the dog did. That's an action. He stood on his hind legs. We could all look and see the dog doing that. He ended up knocking the manager over. Lying there on the floor, right in front of everybody, the manager started to cry, and the dog licked his face. Those are all observations. Those are all things that everyone there could see and say, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. So those are all, oops, I forgot to put my bullet points in. Those are all observations, things that other people can look and see the exact same thing happening. Now, what interpretations did we have? Well, there are things might other people look and say, no, maybe that's not what the dog wanted to do. Well, I saw this right here. You could tell that all he wanted to do was get face to face with the manager and thank him for the good time he was having. Well, I don't know if other people, like the people right around the store, would think that's what he wanted to do. They probably might have thought that he just wants to cause a commotion, or maybe he's even a vicious dog. Now, this other one, the manager must have been having a bad day. That's also interpretation. Now, other people would probably interpret it the same way. If a grown man's on the floor crying, they're probably going to say, yeah, he's having a rough day. But we don't know that because the manager himself doesn't say that. So since she's interpreting someone else's feelings, that means it's that interpretation section. She's thinking on someone else's feelings. And then we have this one right here. The dog leaned over, real concern. We're not inside the dog's head. We're just Opal. So Opal's making that interpretation, thinking this is what the dog's thinking or feeling. So when we're reading, we need to think about the person's point of view and think about, is it an observation? Are they giving us facts that other people would agree with? Or is it their interpretation? Are they using their own experiences to think this is what's going on? Now, I want you guys, as we get ready for another story tomorrow, think about that observation versus interpretation tomorrow. Think about who's telling the story and how are those interpretations affecting their view of what's going on. We're going to be reading a story about a horse for our next little excerpt. All right, guys, I'll see you later.